Hello, ladies and gentlemen. James here. I hope you're doing well. Still got that little nasal thing going on. Uh, cough a little bit. But anyway, I'm going to do this video, and it's going to be controversial. And it's going to hit right to some videos, but it varies on different opinions. But it's not my commentary, but it's their commentary. And whatever you take from this video, but this is going to be something that's deep to home. I'm going to start with a couple videos that dealing with white people, and I hope anybody white don't find this offensive, but they gonna let it come to themselves. You gonna hear from the people themselves, and then you'll hear a couple commentaries in the history. I got another video going to show about the white people and their history. Alright then. So please don't take it to offense to my white listeners, but I'm going to go ahead and play the video.
Beyond.
And it's something really deep.
Well, we had covered a podcast pointing out how white women were the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action, yet you had white women like Abigail Fisher come out with Students for Fair Admissions to try to overturn affirmative action way before this case where they actually did it with college admissions. But I want you to hear what this particular white woman says about how white women will always choose whiteness over anything else. Let's go ahead and roll it.
I see a lot of people talking about the affirmative action ruling, and there's a lot of people pointing out that white women were actually some of the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action, and so people are kind of naturally asking, why did conservative white women vote for things that would take away, people who would take away things that are benefiting them? And I think that there's some things to be discussed here that we don't really talk about very often. One of those things is that regardless of party, white women will, the vast majority of the time, vote whiteness over gender, because we can still receive the runoff of the benefits that white men get or give themselves when they're in power. So white families will still benefit, and we might not make the same amount of money that white men make, and we might have our right to choose birth when we want to ripped away, but we will still always be the beneficiaries of white men in power. And so when we look at the way white men have structured our society to treat people who aren't white, we think, well, I don't want that. Like, this isn't great, but it's not that. And so because we don't really talk about that very often, because that requires people to dig underneath and really acknowledge privilege to talk about how racist they are. And this applies to liberal women as well. We will continuously see women, even liberal women, voting against their own interests because their primary identifier is white, and the thing that gives them the most privilege in this country is their relationship to white men. And the interesting part about that, even beyond this, is that white men kind of, as a whole, only really care for white women to the extent of what we can do for them. So the whole dynamic is pretty up, but yeah, just something that I don't think we really talk about very often.
Now, what this woman said, black women have paid attention to this in the last few election cycles. These white women get up here talking about, oh, they doing us this, they doing us that, and then when they go to the voting booth, they always choose white supremacy over gender, white supremacy over sisterhood, white supremacy, no matter how they men treat them, because as she said, at least if I choose white supremacy, I get the runoff of white supremacy, and at least I do not want to be treated like those black people, so for sure I'm going to stay on team white supremacy. So it lets you know, of course we know this, brothers, but let you sisters know that think you could join up with them for anything, that they're not your friend, they're not your ally, because they're always going to choose white supremacy over you, period. You may have an individual white woman that may be speaking the truth, like this lady in the video, and shout out to her for speaking the truth, but you better believe she is the exception, not the rule. You understand? So they always going to choose white supremacy because they look at it as a survival mechanism to choose white supremacy. They don't choose righteousness, they choose white supremacy. They don't choose equality, they choose white supremacy. They're not going to choose diversity, they're going to choose white supremacy. Understand? They're not going to ever side with you or side with me. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. Because this is what I say. At least they're supporting their men wholesale. So I can't say nothing about that. I mean, shoot, we should have, I mean, if we could work together as brothers and sisters and if we had to support wholesale, should it be even better for us too, right? But let me know what y'all think about what this woman is saying. Because some people, you know,
Are you on your way?
Yep, coming.
This one
Mom and Dad?
will give you a history.
Don't worry, they'll be
It's
there.
in black and white. So I've
You'll be
never
on the
heard before.
expected. The #1 most dependable mass market brand 3 years in a row by JD.
So now I'm about to get into some very graphic stuff. So if you have children and you don't want them to hear anything graphic, I'm not talking about cursing. I'm talking about descriptions of events that took place during the slave trade. I'm going to read these Bible verses first, and then I'm going to read you guys some references. And you guys will see that something, I don't know how unique it was, but you will see that something occurs here that I believe has ties into the days of Noah, personally. It says, "And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trusted, throughout all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy God hath given thee." All right. "And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee in the siege, and in the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee. So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall be evil toward his brother, and toward his wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children which he shall leave, so that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children whom he shall eat, because he hath nothing left him in the siege, and in the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in thy gates." Hold on, let me make a note here real quick, because I don't want to forget this point. All right. "And the tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set her sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eyes shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter, and toward her young one that cometh out from between her feet, and toward her children which she shall bear, for she shall eat them for one of all things secretly." Again, "she shall eat them for one of all things secretly in the siege and straitness wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in thy gates." So it's talking about cannibalism. Some people will say this is figurative. Some people will say, well, we don't see any stories of people eating their sons and daughters, or people eating people, or cannibalism in Africa. But understand, this is part of the curse. So now I'm about to read you guys some references. Now again, some of this stuff is really graphic. We'll come over here. We'll start with a picture. We'll start off slow. This picture right here of them boiling black people. You see the parts hanging up right here among other animals, and you see a black hand, and you see what appears to be black ears. Now, some people will say this is what they were doing to torture black people. But let's keep going. I'm gonna share. Hold on, let me share this with you guys, so you guys can take a look at this if you want to on your own time. All right, there we go. So the first, we start off with the picture. Now, the next place we're going to go is a UCL. This is a UK website about UCL. Founded in 1826 in the heart of London, UCL is London's leading multidisciplinary university with more than 13,000 staff and 42,000 students from 150 different countries. So this is not just a random website on the internet. It's been around since 1826. Not the website, the university. So, people like to take stuff out of context. Let me read this to you. Now, this is from a document called White Cannibalism in the Slave Trade, The Curious Case of Schooner Arrogante. Let me share this link with you guys so you guys can read this for yourselves. All right, here we go. So again, white cannibalism in the slave trade, the curious case of Schooner Arrogante. It says the Portuguese ship Arrogante was captured in late November 1837 by the HMS Snake off the coast of Cape San Antonio in Cuba. At the time of her capture, the Arrogante had more than 330 Africans on board who had all been embarked at Galenas. All of them were liberated soon after the vessel reached Montego Bay, Jamaica, where soon after their arrival, a chilling mystery surrounded the alleged practices carried out by her captain and crew were also brought to the attention of the local authorities. Shortly after landing, the captain and crew were accused of killing an African man, cooking his flesh, and serving it to the rest of the slaves on board. Additionally, they were accused of eating the heart and liver of the murdered man. It says the examination of the story of what happened on the Arrogante constitutes another example that supports the case of historians who currently claim that the atrocities committed by the slavers were more common than we have thought thus far. It also raises the question of why the slavers would sacrifice whom they hoped to sell upon their arrival in Cuba. This case also highlights the questionable impartiality of Jamaican magistrates, courts, and authorities at the time that coincided with the final emancipation of the slaves in the British West Indies. And the paper discusses the weight and credibility given to the testimonies received from African slaves, most of whom in this case were children. So, what did we read here? They were going to eat their children. Thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and thy daughters. And then we read here that it was commonplace for them to kill slaves and feed them to other slaves. So you might say, okay, that's just one source. Well, let's go over here to Wikipedia. It's a book review of The Delectable Negro. Let's go down here. Contents. Again, if you have kids in the room, you may not want them to hear this. For those of you who say, well, Wikipedia isn't a reliable source, if you don't know how to check references in a Wikipedia article, that means you probably did not go to college, which means you probably don't know how to write references in a paper, but you can click these numbers right here and it will take you to the references. As you can see, it tells you the page, it tells you where they got the references from. You can click all of these and see the references. So anyway, here we go. I warned you, but here we go. Woodard draws on a wide range of critical methodologies and texts, including works progress administration interviews, advertisements for runaway slaves, and slave narratives. He writes that when Black Americans describe instances of cannibalism, they tried to understand why and how they had become so delectable, so erotically appetizing to a nation and white populace that at least rhetorically denied and despised their humanity. Woodard begins the delectable Negro at the intersection of the transatlantic slave trade and the consumptive appetites of white people. While white cannibalism was widely reported in the accounts of African slaves from the 16th century up through the 19th, previous scholarship largely dismissed the accounts as superstition or unfounded indigenous terrors. Woodard validates Black accounts, offering evidence of punishment rituals, including an instance of a slaveholder forcing slaves to eat the boiled ear of a member of their community. Woodard writes how, in the autobiography, The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Alouda Equiano, Equiano's recurring fears of being cannibalized by Europeans who captured him were intertwined with his homoerotic attachments to white men. Thank you in the super chat. So he had a fear of being eaten by white people. Why were Africans or people taken from West Africa afraid of being eaten by white men? I thought they thought these people were gods. Now we're finding out that they were really afraid of being eaten by white people. Woodard then examines a series of historical incidents where the slave owner's culture of honor is bolstered by the consumption and sexualized brutalization of slaves. The third and fourth chapters of The Delectable Negro include close textual analysis of the works of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Jacobs. Woodard writes that Douglass describes slavery more than anyone else has as a cannibalistic institution and suggests that Douglass may have been raped while he was a slave. Turning his focus to Jacob's incidents in the life of a slave girl, Woodard argues for a more fluid conception of gender and black consumption. He offers an original interpretation of Jacob's character of Luke, arguing that the variance of fluidity of Luke's desires and gender enables him to survive within a culture of consumption. Woodard also explores white women's roles inside economies of power, sexuality, and gender consumption. Let's keep going. The final chapters of The Delectable Negro trace the notions of consumption to the modern era. Woodard approaches the historical figure of Nat Turner, whose flesh was rendered into medicinal grease. Through Williams Styron's fictionalized 1967 novel, The Confessions of Nat Turner, Woodard addresses black intellectual critiques of the book and James Baldwin's defense of it. He links the heteronormative and anxiety around homoeroticism evident in the 1960s black radical movements to the legacy of the rape of black men during slavery. So we see what they were doing. They were eating people, raping men. They were taking children and using them for alligator bait. I mean, these people were pure evil. So anyway, let's keep going. I have a couple more sources. The Delectable Negro, you guys can see that here. New York Press. I'll share that with you guys. You guys can read that for yourself. Make sure that went through. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. Cannibals, witches, and slave traders in the Atlantic world. Again, I'll read that. Cannibals, witches, and slave traders in the Atlantic world. The William and Mary Quarterly, Volume 60, Number 2, April 2003. The Omohundro Institute of Early American History and Culture. Give me a second. I'm going to share this link with you guys. I'm going to take that down. Give me a second here. Okay. So now, the William and Mary Quarterly. I'm going to read this to you guys. Now, remember, people were saying that cannibalism didn't happen during slavery. It says, these bloody fears were nearly ubiquitous among Africans forced across the Atlantic during the years of the slave trade. Aluuda Equano's account of his own terror, see that name keeps coming up, his own terror at the thought that he would be eaten is perhaps the best known of these stories from among the Igbos in what is now southern Nigeria. Though there are others, Isabella Falupo, a slave from the rivers of Guinea, modern Guinea-Bissau, testifying in the same inquest as Jose Manzolo, noted that she believed such things, and slaves coming from other places believed it as well, including those that she met from Alada, now Benin. Now, Benin, it used to be known as Dahomey, which was the area we now know as the Kingdom of Judah, which we see on other maps. So the Israelites in West Africa believed these white people were cannibals and that they were taking slaves to eat. They didn't worship these people as gods. They didn't see these people as superior. They saw them as demons or cannibals. It says, it was this chilling fear of being killed, eaten by white cannibals, crushed to make oil, which is what happened in Nat Turner, or ground to make gunpowder that drove some of the human cargo on the ship that bore Jose Manzolo to Cartagena to jump into the sea. We all saw that in Black Panther at the end where Killmonger wants to be buried at sea with his ancestors. It says perhaps the same fear caused a young Congolese woman, slave to a Congolese master in a village of Marquise of Dama, not far from Jose Manzolo's birthplace, to take her own life in July 1695. According to the Capuchin missionary Luca da Caltanissetta, who was visiting at the time, the woman overheard a conversation between her master and an agent of the Luanda-based Portuguese merchant Francisco Pereira Bravo, who wanted to purchase the woman and her infant son, still nursing at her breast. When she suspected the sale would result in her transfer to America, one more time, when she suspected the sale would result in her transfer to America, she seized the child and angrily threw him against a stone, and then grabbed some arrows from the hand of a man and wrathfully used them to pierce her own breast. In this manner, she desperately died. Why did she do that? Because she thought she was going to be sold to America and eaten by white cannibals. This legend that white people were cannibals was backed by one of the sources I just gave you. So the Amohundro Institute of Early American History and Culture. It says, I just want to read you guys a little bit of background. This William May Quarterly is from 1892 to 2020. Here's their contact information. If you guys want to debunk them, is their website right here. Let me share their website for you guys real quick. That way you guys can go there yourself and contact them if you want to. It says the Omohundro Institute of Early American History and Culture supports scholars and scholarship focused on the extensive field of early American history. The OI has produced a deep bench of award-winning scholarly monographs on a variety of topics, published the leading journals in the field, the William Mary Quarterly, and sponsored events including conferences designed to bring together scholars for robust exchange at various levels of career achievement for robust exchange. So now, we've seen that she dashed her infant child. One more time. It says she seized the child and angrily threw him against a stone, and then she grabbed some arrows from the hand of a man and wrathfully used them to pierce her own breast. In this manner, she desperately died. So, dash and stone. Let's see here. Psalms 91. Oh, you know what? Let me.
This is deep, man. Woo!
All right, here we go. Right here, Psalms 137:9. What does it say right here? O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dashes thy little ones against the stones. Why is that being said? This is not the only account of a child being dashed against stones. When we read this, when we read the Inquisition, especially in Portugal around Lisbon, there's an earthquake in Lisbon, and they believe that by sacrificing 30 Jews, that they can appease God. And so what you will see is that pregnant women are ripped open, infants are grabbed from them and smashed against the walls and against the ground, and people are raped and murdered and burned and lynched, and all this stuff happens because they want to appease God by murdering black Jews. Let's keep going. See, people say these signs don't fit us, and yet we can see throughout history these signs actually fit us. But let me ask you a question. Let me pull this up. Right here in Mark chapter 10 verse 16. Was this literal or figurative? See, we always thought, well, I'll say this, I always thought that a lot of this stuff was figurative. Not everything, but some stuff. When he says, behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. And ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. Did he mean that literally when he said, I send you out as sheep amidst the wolves? What do wolves do to sheep? They eat them. And here we see during slavery that the people being sent into slavery were already afraid of these people because they were said to be cannibals. And then we read that there are stories of them cooking humans and feeding them to other people. Let me, one more time, I just want to, let me see here. Where was it at? Just want to make sure. Right here. They were being cannibalized by Europeans. Right there. Slaveholder forcing slaves to eat the boiled ear of a member of their community. Right before that. Let's see. right here, where it says, let me start at the beginning. It says, this case also highlights the questionable impartiality of Jamaican magistrates, courts, and authorities at the time that coincided with the final emancipation of the slaves in the British West Indies, and the paper discusses the weight and credibility given to the testimonies received from the African slaves, most of whom in this case were children. Why is that important? It's destroying the African who were accused of killing African, cooking his flesh, and serving the rest of the slaves on board.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my channel, Runaway Slave. This channel was created to promote my self-published masterpiece, The N-Word is No Secret in the Service. I wrote this book after I spent over 10 years as an officer in the United States Secret Service. During this time, I learned what true foundational, institutionalized, or systemic workplace racism is and how it affects my people. If you would like to purchase this masterpiece, just click the link down in the description. If you enjoy the content and would like to support the channel, please continue to like, share, and subscribe. In addition, if you would like to make a donation, we do have a cash app, which is $runawayslave609. Okay, let's cook. Okay, so today, peoples, we're going to talk about the role of the Karen, or the white woman, during slavery, okay? Now, first, let's get into what slavery was for people who may not know. American chattel slavery was a time when American citizens enslaved black people. Chattel slavery in American history is when white people used black people for their labor, sex, and breeding. We were treated like animals that you would see on a farm. This form of slavery is not to be confused with being an indentured servant. In addition, this slavery was permitted by elected officials in the United States government. Okay, we cleared that part up for you. So now you know what slavery was chattel slavery in America was. Now, we all hear stories and we know about how harsh white men were towards black people during slavery. We know about all that. We know about the stories about the whip. We've seen the movies. We know about the chopping off of the testicles, the feet, the whipping people, the raping women. We knew about, we've heard about all this. We know about this. But what a lot of people don't know is that white women during chattel slavery were equally as harsh. And they were equally as harsh because they flexed the power that they had to the max. Okay? So even though they may not have appeared to have done as much, they did everything that they can do with the power that they had. Now, at this time during chattel slavery, white women were powerless in the eyes of white men. White men did not respect white women as people who should have any type of authority in the government or making certain decisions or things like that. You know, at this time, women weren't even allowed to vote. They were not considered. Okay? But one thing that they had power to do is they had involvement in how the slaves were treated. So these women, even though they had power nowhere else and they could do nothing else, they couldn't make decisions, they couldn't do certain things, they could flex the power that they had came from what they were able to do with slaves, and this made them feel empowered and validated as strong women. You know what I'm saying? What they can do with their slaves. And they exercised this power, which was the only power that they had, to the max. These women were very evil, they were very sinister. That's how they were, and the Bride and Chucky ain't have nothing on them. You know? These were some evil, very sinister, vindictive women flexing their power, the only power that they were permitted to have. Okay? Now, these women had motivations. They had motivation to participate, promote, and maintain chattel slavery. And there were situations that were created for them where they could reap great benefits from slavery. In many of the southern states, right, the only property that white women were allowed to own from a husband were slaves. Okay? This is in the southern states. They couldn't own anything. No business, no house, no car, no land, but they can own slaves. In 1824, due to something called the Adams-Onis Treaty, which is something that's interesting, you should look into this, right? But married women in Florida were granted the right to own property as the result of this. Now, basically, at this time, the government was saying that they wanted families to expand and move to this new territory called Florida, because Florida was once owned by Spain, by the Spanish. So now the U.S. government took it over and they own it. They own it now. So due to this treaty, white women who were married actually got some power now. Now they had the ability to own slaves. Okay? And this treaty, it included protection against women slaves being taken away if her husband died or if they divorced. Okay? So basically before, white women weren't allowed to have anything and own anything, but after this treaty, right, white women were allowed to keep her slaves. She was allowed to own these slaves after her husband died, and she could also use these slaves, her slaves, as collateral for a loan. So in this treaty, later on, the states of Mississippi, North Carolina, Arkansas, and others would pass laws that protected these women's rights to own slaves as well. Okay? So they gave these women these rights in Florida because what they were trying to do is they were working on southern expansion. They were trying to motivate people to come to this area, right? They're trying to get white women and families to move to Florida. So they figured, well, one way that we can do this is give them some rights. So let's let these women have the right to own and keep slaves even after, if her husband passes away, she becomes a widow, or if they're divorced. So that's a heck of a motivator, don't you think? So before that, no, the women, they couldn't own, they couldn't vote, can't own a car, can't own a business, can't own a house. But slaves, yes, they can inherit their slaves in the times of divorce and death. So that's motivation for these women to be really involved in maintaining and pushing slavery. You know what I'm saying? These slaves also gave these women enough financial security to feel confident in divorcing abusive white men. Okay? So before, at one point, these women would have to just put up with this abuse. If they had an abusive husband, it was nothing that they can do. They had to sit back and take it. But now, being that these slaves have some financial security, these white women have some financial security with slaves, they had more confidence in divorcing these abusive men when these men were abusive or things like that. They could just divorce the men and rent out the slaves for income or use them to acquire a loan. So this whole women's power movement, that's what this is. So the foundation of this, what empowered women at this time, was black slaves. Black slaves, our peoples, gave these women, that empowered these women to be able to do certain things like deal with an abusive husband, get a divorce. Because now they can feel more confident knowing they had financial backing to do some of the things they had. Now, I can rent my slaves out, or I can use my slaves to get us a loan. Wow. So, when you talk about women empowerment, we see that right here, these slaves were the foundation of empowering women to do these certain things that they still talk about, getting abused by a man and this and that. Well, look at that. So when you hear about these women, these white women empowerment movements, don't get it twisted, man. Don't get it twisted. These movements are all rooted in racism. That does not include our peoples. That don't include our sisters, our grandmothers, our aunts, women of our country. That don't include us. That's for them. Now, we may be used as pawns in these situations And we often keep getting bamboozled about this, y'all, but that's not the case, man. That's not the case. So, in a nutshell, being that these women were given certain rights over slaves, which is the only rights that they had, right? It made them feel more authoritative. It gave them motivation to make certain decisions, being vindictive, being harsh, and trying to maintain and breed slaves and things like that. It made these women feel empowered and validated. This is a white woman's empowerment movement, slavery, and owning black slaves. Now, as far as these white Karens on these plantations expressing their authority and power, another way that they did this, or one of the main ways they did this, was by sexually assaulting black men and forcing black men into relationships. I know that's not in the books. You're not going to read this in school. Many of these plantation Karens felt that they owned black men outright. Now, there was a belief at this time, and still is, that black people were inferior. This is what they believed, but even with that belief, even when it was even more intense then, the black male body was a subject of fascination for these white women, for many white women on these plantations. Black men were portrayed as hypersexualized, and white slave-owning women often used black men as opportunities for sexual exploration. These women felt entitled, right? They felt entitled, and they felt like they had full control of black men on these plantations. It made them feel entitled. They felt super powerful and strong, and a black man was their property, straight up. And this was a cultural norm. This was a cultural norm at this time, something that wasn't often talked about. Yeah, we know that the white men were raping black women on these plantations, but we don't hear too much about what these plantation Karens was doing, right? And if you need to verify that, go verify it. Look at a black source. You know what I'm saying? People will say, hey, well, I didn't read that in any history books. That's not, where do you find that at? Verify it yourself. Verify that it ain't true. And when you do it, make sure you have at least one black source when you do it, okay? Now, if a white woman at this time who was messing with a black man or using a black man for sex or just to be her lover or whatever, when he didn't want to, if she was exposed or if somebody caught her doing this, the black woman usually went out and said that the black man tried to do this, he did this, she flexed her white female pure innocent thing, that whole thing going on, in a way to, get away from this situation or try to look innocent if she got exposed. She was the one who forced this relationships, but if she got caught by, I don't know, a neighbor or a mailman or whoever, you know what I'm saying? She often accused the black male of forcing himself on her or being inappropriate, you know what I mean? Or this black man was lusting after her. Black man wasn't even lusting. Come on, man. But this is what they said and did in order to act like they were innocent if they were caught. And this is also where the black male whole rapist stigma comes from. All these black men are looking at me, they're doing this and that. A lot of these white women were saying this because they were getting exposed for what they were doing and making these black men have sex with them. And then they would try to pull this whole, I'm innocent, I'm pure, look, I would never look at it as such a thing. Oh no, you know what I'm saying? This is what they were doing. Now, of course, again, this is where the black male rapist stigma comes from, but then just think, the slave master husband, what you think happened when he found this out? When he found this out, or this news was brought to him, of course, and then you have this woman who was doing all these things with the black male, taking advantage of him, forcing him into sexual relationships. They would act innocent, and of course, the white slave master man had the power to respond with harsh violence towards these black men. The things that they did to black men at these times when these women lied on them, that could be an entire study. That could be an entire 3-hour video. It's so harsh that we don't even just imagine anything you could think. Anything that you could think. And the white man did this because he was trying to flex his power and show that he was protecting the innocence and purity of his white woman. He's flexing too. because it's people around, other white neighbors and white people. You know, they're like, okay, well, we heard what you gonna do. You know what I mean? This is what these men were doing when their white women were exposed, or there was a change that they heard some things that, oh, well, we heard that your white wife, she was doing this. And then, of course, the white woman, she didn't say, oh, well, no, I did it. She went along with the lie, tried to act innocent and pure. Well, I did see him looking at, you know, all that type of dumb stuff. So, just imagine what happens, or how embarrassed these white male plantation guys felt when their Karens, when these white women got pregnant or impregnated by one of these black slaves. Could you imagine how everybody looked at him? How his relatives, his family, now he's knowing that he's not the father of the baby or whatever. He knows that he probably ain't touched her for months, and she pops up pregnant. Could you imagine what's going through his head and the things that he did, what he had to do to cover it up? Imagine all the barnyard abortions going on then. Because she can't have this black baby, you know what I mean? So when the men did it to the women, oftentimes they kept the baby because the baby was looked at as still black. You can go out here and work and be a slave too. But how embarrassing is that to the other white brothers that they have out there that, hold up, your wife had a baby by a slave. So just imagine the barnyard abortions were going on then. Because they were doing this often and plenty. So, another issue with these plantation Karens is a lot of these white slave-owning women were jealous if a black male slave had a relationship with a black woman, a wife, okay? So if she would see that this man that she liked had a wife and he was in a relationship with a black woman on a plantation, she would do all kind of vindictive things, you know, and to just sabotage that relationship because she's jealous, she's miserable, she wants to be with this black man, and she sees, oh, he's happy with this black woman on his plantation, or he's happy with this black woman. So she would just hop in and she would really flex her power then, you know, and of course it looked like she was doing her job, or, you know, other people oftentimes couldn't tell, like, why is she doing this? And they wouldn't care, even her husband, because remember, this is some of the power that he gave her, or they gave them. So when they made these decisions, like, oh, she's just making a decision. Okay, well, she said, well, he can't have children with her, or he can't go off and see her. They think, oh, it's just a decision. No, she's doing this because she's jealous of this black woman, and she's mad because this black woman has this man that she likes, or she might have, you know, force him to do things. So when they would see these relationships, what they would do is try to make sure that these black men couldn't see their black wives anymore because they had the power to do that. They had the power to do that, y'all. They would even tell these women that, oh, you can have a child with him, you can do this, or you can't have a child with him, you can do this now. No, even though that's your husband, I need you to have 2 children with him and him. This is what they were doing, you know, because again, these women had financial interest in this, so they were trying to breed as well. So they're doing all kinds of, they're breeding slaves, they're breeding black people, they're forcing black men into having sexual relationships with them. They're keeping black men away from their wives. They're jealous of these black women on these plantations, you know, because she might be married to a man that she wants, but she can't go all out with the relationship, even though she wants to. She wants to, you know, continue to have sex, you know, make him have sex with her and things like that. So that's the way it was, you know. These white slave-owning women, they created a market. They created a market and demand for enslaved black women to serve as laborers and caretakers to their children, okay, as well. So these women, they took pride. They took a certain pride in raising the next plantation slave masters, but they needed help doing this. So in order for these women to spend time with their children, right, they had to get enslaved black women to do all the housework, all the household work, all the bathing, all the dressing, all the feeding, all the general supervision of these white children so that they had time to spend with these children. And the hypocrisy in this is these same white women believe that black mothers were uncaring and they weren't good mothers for their own children. Yet, they felt that these same women could be trained and taught how to be good caretakers for their children. So, look at the hypocrisy in this. She has to leave her children and take care of all these children. She got to do the household work, she got to do the bathing, the feeding, the cooking, all that stuff. And yet while she's doing that, this white woman is looking at her like she's not a good mom. The hypocrisy in that, huh? That's crazy. In addition, these same women, when they seen these black women doing all this work, and they would look at them like unfit mothers because they didn't have enough time to spend with their own children, they would make many of these white Karen women, they would make the black woman's children, right, call them mom and act like they're the mother because, oh, your mom's not good enough, she's not doing this, or she's an unfit mother, this and that. Of course she doesn't have the time to because she's taking care of her children. And they would take over and make these black children call them mother or even disrespect and disregard their mother because they said, oh, she's not a good woman. But yeah, she's taking care of all your children, so she don't have time to work. This is the hypocrisy. Can't y'all see how this stuff still goes on now? These type of things? It's crazy. It's crazy. Now, when this stuff happened, I know people might think, okay, well, dang, but nothing she could do. No, because here's the even scarier part. Here's the even spookier part. If a white woman was disobedient or even tried to express her viewpoint to this white Karen at all, she was threatened with the fact that these women would sell her children away. Could you imagine that? That's how they kept these women submissive and in check. So that's why, like, people, when we see these old pictures of these old movies and things of these black women acting all submissive and bucking and yazza balls and an eye bulging, you gotta remember, you gotta give them a break on that, man. You gotta give them a because they were doing this most of the time because they were scared to have their kids taken away. They wanted to see their kids. So it was like, I gotta act like this, or if I don't, she's gonna send my kid and I'll never see my child ever again. Could you imagine that? Imagine going through that, or what kind of pressure that was. Now what gets me about this part is, nowadays, I will see people like this, acting like this at work. I will see black women, black men, in this case we're talking about black women, acting like this at work just to get invited to a party. Black people in general, you know what I mean? Because I know I got people that want to always, do the work of these, white supremacists and create the job. I know what y'all doing. You want to do the work and create this. I know what you're doing. So let's say black people, because yes, this is black people. This one just happens to be the role of the Karens during slavery and how she treated black women and black men. Okay? So what gets me, and what I was just saying is, many of these women that you see bucking their eyes in these pictures, or, in movies, different movies, you see women looking like, yazza balls and then cooning. A lot of these black women were doing this because they wanted to see their children. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm saying, a lot of times you gotta watch what you say about these people back then. Watch what you say and how you look at stuff, because I see people doing these things not to keep their children. I've seen people numerous times doing this just to get an office party invite, or for a white person to pat them between the eyebrows and say, hey, good job, you're doing great. I've seen this. You've seen it too. So just go figure, how disrespectful was that to your people, or the people that lived before you, your ancestors, your bloodline, people that look just like you. They're doing this bucking and cooning because they want to see their kids. They can't even get out of line because they know this white Karen would sell my child off. She would sell my daughter, my son, my 3 kids. Just imagine that. And you got people bucking and doing this stuff at work just for a pat between the eyebrows from a white person, or an office party invite, or some old dumb mess like that. But I do still believe that some of this this workplace cooning or acting in these ways, I think some of it is genetically tagged in us too. I really do. I really do, because I've seen some cooning to the point where I just couldn't believe it. You know, it was like, why are you doing it? I've even asked one time. I asked a lady. I said, why are you doing this? Well, I said, listen, because I knew her, and I said, hey, how come when them white people come around, why are you doing this? You know what she said? She said, Muhammad, I don't know why I do this. Facts. I'm dead serious. This is what she said. So a lot of times when we see our peoples at work, or they get around white people and they just start cooning, you like, dang, and you go ask them like, yo, you did that you turned into a whole, like, how you do? You did that on demand and command, like, why you do that? A lot of times they can't even explain it, yo. They just do it because I think some of this stuff is genetically tagged in some of us from slavery. Yeah, they need to stop doing it. They got to work on it. Some people enjoy being a coon, and also it's genetically tagged in them too. So it's like easier for them. But sometimes when you see this, it just be amazing. But what I'm saying is, we got to give, when you see these old pictures and movies of these women during slavery doing certain cooning, you got to understand, they were doing this most often not because they liked these white people. It was because they didn't want to lose their kids. You know what I'm saying? Imagine that kind of pressure. Imagine that kind of pressure.
We've got great news for seniors. The Social Security Administration has made a small burial fund.
This is probably the first video ever on my channel that I am doing on Pearl Davis, aka Just Pearly Things. And after she wrote this, I have a feeling this will not be the last time I will be talking about her. Of course, many of you came to find out about who she is via Jason Black, or the Black Authority, back in March, when he thoroughly exposed and eviscerated her, pretty much ending whatever so-called YouTube career she thinks she still has. He literally threw a whole big ass monkey wrench into her little scheme, and it was a scheme. And as far as I'm concerned, she's still out there scheming. But there was a tweet that she posted up on her Twitter account on June 11, 2023. And this is it right here. It seems to me she's trying to find another grift. But I'm going to read to you what it says. Planned Parenthood was founded in 1910. The founder, Margaret Sanger, was a racist who said, we do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. Blacks made up 15% of the population then, and now make up 13%. A 2% nationwide increase. Why don't you see pro-black content creators cover this? Do you this woman is about as dense as sponge cake. I know what she tried to do here. Like I said, she's trying to get or latch herself onto another grift into talking about quote-unquote pro-black content creators, because she really has nothing else to talk about. I've seen a recent interview that she's done. I forgot what the name of the YouTuber is, and he literally exposed her. Like, the woman is a complete and utter airhead. Like, I literally called her, my nickname for Pearl is the Great Value Lindsay Lohan, because she literally does look like a knockoff, a Lindsay Lohan knockoff. Y'all know who Lindsay Lohan is. That's what she looks like. But let's talk about what she put up here. She said Planned Parenthood was founded in 1910. The founder, Margaret Sanger, was a racist who said, we do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. Blacks made up 15% of the population then, and now make up 13%. Allegedly. So now she's going on that thing of saying black people make up 13% of the population. She might as well have gone the distance and said, oh, they commit 50% of the crime, so on and so forth. She might as well. And then she said, why don't you see pro-black content creators cover this? We've been talked about Margaret Sanger on and offline. As a matter of fact, on my original channel, I did a whole White History Month. In the month of June, might I add. And Margaret Sanger definitely was one of the days in that month, for sure. As a matter of fact, I think Margaret Sanger was day 2, if my memory serves me correctly. She was an early entry. I wanted people to know about her immediately. And I did that White History Month back in 2017 before we even knew who the hell a Just Pearly Things was. Too bad I don't have my original channel so people can see it, but those who have been around since the beginning know exactly what the White History Month was. As a matter of fact, White History Month was actually the first type of series that I did on my channel before there was a Triple P or a Sundown series or a Bed Bucking and Blackarin videos. That was the first series, and I did all of that in 1 month. But for her to sit up there and try to claim that we don't talk about her, that is a complete and utter lie. But furthermore, what makes this tweet even more insulting is the fact that she got on here, wrote this little excerpt like we cannot do the research if people didn't know who Margaret Sanger was already, or the fact that she makes it seem like black people didn't know who the hell Margaret Sanger already was. We know that this woman played a huge part in what happened with the black community, especially the Foundation of Black American Community in particular. We know what role she played in all of this, going back all those years. But Pearl is sitting up here making it seem like she's giving them some kind of a history lesson. No, you're the one who is late. The fact that you wrote this in the tone that you did, I'm willing to bet she probably just learned about Margaret Sanger the week she posted this. But of course, in her colonizing spirit, in true colonizing form, if they discover it, then it must be groundbreaking. But this is who she is, y'all. This is the real Just Pearly Things. In case y'all didn't know who she was before, you got a glimpse of the real her right here. Like I said, her grift is done. What she had going on prior to when TBA completely obliterated her like Exodia from Yu-Gi-Oh! Is done. And the thing is about it, the great thing about it is, she was exposed way before he did it back in March. And I think that was the second time he did it, but it was this time because it was surrounding around what I guess you could say a controversy. Because she had Nick Fuentes on her show. Listen, this woman had Nick Fuentes on her show. That should tell you all you need to know about her. And we all know about Nick Fuentes. I talked about Nick Fuentes a couple of times on my channel.
He's a racist.
And we all know who he is. And the reason why he's gotten banned on pretty much every social media platform you can think of, and the only way he can get on social media is when he is being invited on by other people. And she invited him on. As a matter of fact, she was the same one that tried to say that slavery was embellished because of what was put into Roots. Yeah, if y'all watched that TBA broadcast, all of that was in there. As a matter of fact, that was the first time I called in to TBA. I felt compelled to call in that day. It was because it was around this subject matter, her. Some of y'all was in there and saw it. But yeah, that's exactly who she is. So she put this up here thinking that we didn't know who Margaret Sanger was. We know who she was. The rest, a lot of the world probably didn't know who she was, but we know who she was. And it sounds to me like Pearl just found out who she is. Well, Pearl, congratulations, because you played yourself. And you are now officially on my radar. And whenever I tell someone that they are on my radar, that's not a good thing. So we're going to be keeping an even closer eye on her. And trust and believe to those of you watching over here on my channel, this is only the beginning. Trust and believe that. Anyone who could say something like this and insult my intelligence, who can insult our intelligence, and y'all know that's a big pet peeve of mine, we keeping a close eye on everything they do now. Keep in mind, this is also
I'm about to go off and about to end this short. This shows you the whole story and about different views about the some white women, not all white women, but some, and what they're capable of doing. It's only fair because I always pull excuse me. I always mention about black women, but I don't talk about the Asian people. I ain't talk about the white woman. But this one took the cake. Alright then, I hope you guys like this video. Excuse my voice, it's going up. I hope to see you on the next one. You guys take care. Bye.